Disney's live-action remakes have dazzled audiences around the world, but it takes a lot of work to make these movies as visually impressive as they are. Don't believe it? Take a look at how these Disney live-action remakes look without the CGI. The visual effects wizards at MPC spent 2 long years building the wild, dense world of The Jungle Book, the vast majority of which was created digitally. VFX supervisor Adam Valdez told Animation World Network, "When they came to us wanting to do the movie with blue screen and 1 kid, it was daunting. The company had a team from its Bangalore office visit 50 different jungle locations around India to conduct research for the project. They came back with hundreds of thousands of reference photos, as well as plenty of animal footage for the visual effects team to work with. But creating the movie's photorealistic animals wasn't even the hard part. Making Bagheera and Baloo's interactions with Mowgli feel genuine was what would ultimately make or break Jon Favreau's live-action remake of The Jungle Book, and the MPC team knew that all too well." Valdez explains, "The guys in the rigging department spent many months developing and researching facial anatomy on big cats, wolves, and bears, as well as how they move. In the end, it was an astute suggestion from the director that made all the difference." According to Valdez, John had this brilliant idea of using Jim Henson Company puppeteers to work with Neil Setti, the actor who plays Mowgli, so that he always had a moving and engaging puppet. A young person leaves that to the imagination, and it came through. The visual effects artists working on The Jungle Book were also aware that a lot was riding on the appearance of the story's antagonist, Shere Khan.
"How long did you really think you'd survive against me?"
The human-hating tiger was just a guy in a blue leotard on set, but MPC's team of animators had to turn him into a fearsome villain. According to the company's VFX supervisor Adam Valdez, the challenge was in creating animals that were capable of conveying emotion while still looking completely natural. He told Art of VFX, "We can all relate to some things, like when a deer reacts with fright. We understand that, but how does a tiger sit down with intimidating attitude?" Valdez and his team were on a constant hunt for references as they built Shere Khan from scratch. He explained, "Many clips of animal movements were found, recreated, and then dialed into the shots. The animators spent a lot of time on the shots, adding delicate little touches. Of course, movement is only one aspect of making a convincing CGI animal, but Valdez was never that concerned about the fur. MPC has so much experience with rendering animals that the company has its very own proprietary tool, fertility." Valdez says, "It's quite powerful, and I think we have the best hair and fur in the business." To make it easier for Beauty and the Beast director Bill Condon to get a grip on a CGI-heavy movie, Disney decided to make the experience as physical as possible. VFX supervisor Kyle McCulloch told Deadline, "We had the special effects team build some of the characters as animatronics so they could actually be animated and moved around on set. We had life-size builds of them that we could have on set, and then we had puppets. The Beast was originally going to be achieved using practical effects alone." According to McCulloch, the 2 VFX vendors hired to work on the remake discussed using a mixture of makeup and animatronics, but in the end, the flexibility of the CGI option was just too tempting to pass up. They also needed to make sure that the fidelity of the actor's performance wasn't lost. By going digital, they would be able to take the nuance and subtleties of Dan Stevens' performance and reflect them in the Beast himself. According to McCulloch, "If you were trying to do it under 1,000 pounds of makeup, it was never going to give us the clarity of performance that Digital Domain ultimately achieved in The Beast." When Disney decided to remake 1977's Pete's Dragon, it turned to a vendor with a proven track record of bringing fantasy creatures to life, Weta Digital. Weta has created some of the most memorable CGI characters in movie history, and has worked with motion capture legend Andy Serkis on multiple occasions. Serkis won praise for his portrayal of evolved chimpanzee Caesar in the Planet of the Apes reboot series, and Weta took inspiration from that character when it came to making Pete's titular dragon Elliott. As Weta's Eric Sandin told The Hollywood Reporter, "With Caesar, you really feel his pain and happiness, and with Elliott, it's the same. The big challenge was getting the emotion out of Elliott. The connection between the dragon and Pete is such a big part of the film." Unlike Caesar, however, Elliott wasn't portrayed by an actor in a motion capture suit. Sandin recalled, "We had a green wire mesh head that I would lift over my head. I tried to move the head as best I thought it would work for the shot, and then we'd track the head with our CG Elliott." Peter Jackson's King Kong won 3 Academy Awards in 2006, one of which was for Weta Digital's groundbreaking VFX work. And the famous ape still looks incredible today, but the company became even better at rendering furry animals in the decade that followed. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Weta's Eric Sandin said, "King Kong had about 1 million hairs on him, and probably 1/4 of those hairs were simulated, and we interpolated the rest. On Elliott, we had 20 million, and we individually simulated each hair, so when Pete is petting or interacting with him, we get the interaction with the hair." According to Weta's head of creatures, getting Elliott's fur to look real during close-up interactions was definitely tricky, but the airborne sequences proved most challenging. Geos Johnson told Cartoon Brew, There are lots of flying shots in the movie, and dialing in the right amount of wind for a dragon flying at very fast speeds also took some doing. Fans reacted with a mixture of bemusement and horror when the first trailer for Disney's live-action Aladdin dropped, revealing Will Smith's genie in all his blueness for the first time.
Hello?
Certainly, the former Fresh Prince of Bel-Air star knew he had some extremely big shoes to fill, but so did the visual effects artist tasked with turning him into a Disney icon. The Remakes VFX supervisor Chaz Jarrett told CBR, "We always sort of knew it was going to be contentious, I suppose, that there would be comparisons between our genie and the original, but ultimately we felt confident in the character we created." Finalizing the genie's look wasn't easy either. The team had been working on the character for a year and a half by the time the first trailer came out, constantly tinkering with his appearance. According to Jarrett, he wasn't initially supposed to look much like Smith at all, and the VFX team experimented with a range of more cartoonish blue genies during pre-production. Ultimately, however, they decided that they wouldn't be making the best use of the film's biggest star with this approach. As Jarrett says, "When you've got Will Smith, you realize what makes Will Smith work is all the little Will Smith mannerisms. If you try putting those mannerisms on something that isn't Will Smith, it isn't quite satisfying." According to Aladdin's visual effects supervisor, the iconic A Whole New World scene would have played out quite differently had it not been for director Guy Ritchie's vision. When Chaz Jarrett and his team first started working on the magic carpet ride, they envisioned the journey taking place over the course of an entire day, with the titular street rat picking up the princess at sunrise and dropping her back off at the palace right after sunset. Jarrett told Art of VFX, "It worked well, but Guy felt strongly that he wanted it all to happen at night as in the original. So he took helicopter units to a number of locations to Jordan and Namibia and Africa and filmed elements. The footage they captured blended well with the footage of Mina Massoud and Naomi Scott, who mimed their own recording of the song in front of a giant blue screen."
It literally felt like, a magic carpet. It was incredible.
According to Naomi Scott, the scene was quite the workout too, since the actors had to support their own weight as the rig shifted from side to side. The dress transformation scene isn't just one of the most iconic moments of the original animated Cinderella, it's one of the most iconic Disney moments, period. Naturally, the studio used snippets from the scene to promote its live-action remake, but this move ended up backfiring big time. In one trailer for 2015's Cinderella, star Lily James appears to look a lot thinner around the waist than she normally does, and the pre-VFX footage seemed to back up claims that her waistline had been digitally altered. The British actress denied that this was the case during an interview with the Los Angeles Times, insisting that she was just a really healthy person with a naturally small waist. The actress went on to complain about people who were, in her opinion, kicking up a big fuss over nothing. She said, "I think all that stuff's so negative and you've got to let it wash over your head." But how does she explain images that seem to prove that her waist miraculously changed sizes? It's all down to her on-set fairy godmother, costume designer Sandy Powell. James explained, "The skirt's big and the corset pulls me in, and that's the point. That's the shape Sandy Powell created." Tim Burton's remake of 1941's Dumbo was one of the most ambitious Disney live-action projects from a visual effects standpoint, largely because of the eponymous elephant. Dumbo was animated entirely from scratch in certain scenes, but when the blue-eyed elephant needed to interact with one of the humans in the story, preacher actor Ed Osmond came in. Osmond was kitted out with crutch-like arm extensions and had to walk around on all fours for 2 to 3 hours per day, wearing a variety of different green suits. The actor told Insider, "It's a very strange job. The struggle with the arm extensions is if you don't get the rhythm right, if you don't do right arm, left arm, right leg, you end up walking like a table." Osmond was also hooked up to an earpiece so he could communicate with the film's VFX supervisor, MPC's Richard Stammers, during his scenes. According to Stammers, the 4'6" actor was crucial to facilitating physical interaction and eye lines during some of the remake's most pivotal moments. Stammers told Art of VFX, "Having Ed there allowed Tim to direct the performance, and we would always do our first rehearsal and takes with Ed in place." The hardest part of remaking Dumbo was always going to be the flying scenes. It's easy to suspend your sense of disbelief for animated movies, but when you're watching a live-action film and the animals look real, that becomes a lot harder to do. In order to make the flight scenes feel as genuine as possible, the VFX team did a lot of research into birds and how their wings work in relation to their body. MPC's animation supervisor Catherine Mullen told Animation World Network, "You're trying to get as much anticipation and effort into each of the 2 or 3 giant flaps when Dumbo gets off the ground. Those were the key moments. Also making sure that he isn't rising up too quickly or easily. Dumbo flying solo was a challenge, but things got even more complicated when the elephant had riders. A 6-axis rig was constructed, and the VFX team used what MPC supervisor Richard Stammers described as visual production techniques. In a nutshell, director Tim Burton could see a crude version of what Dumbo would actually look like in the finished scene there and then. Stammers explains, Ava Green and the children, Nico Parker and Finley Hobbins, got to ride this rig, with each wide or mid-shot specially programmed. On-set compositing enabled Tim to approve performances in context to the animation within minutes of each take being captured. Winnie the Pooh and the rest of the 100-Acre Wood gang were painstakingly brought to life in 2018's live-action Christopher Robin, but bringing the honey-loving bear and his friends out of the woods and into England's capital city was a mammoth task for the visual effects crew. Framestore's VFX supervisor Chris Lawrence singled out some key members of his team during an in-depth interview with Shoot Online, including the vendor's global director of animation, Michael Ames. Lawrence explained, Ames brought an incredible attention to detail and the valuable knowledge of a practitioner. Often, he would simply sketch exactly what he wanted. I thought with Winnie the Pooh, he achieved one of the most subtle, nuanced animated screen performances ever seen.
No, this is very confusing. It may be the hunger.
You've just eaten.
Oh, that's right. Maybe I didn't eat enough.
Bringing Winnie the Pooh to the real world meant that actor Ewan McGregor had to act opposite some pretty creepy headless dolls in some scenes. But this was nothing new for the Scottish star, who told Screen Rant, I did it all in the Star Wars movies, quite a lot. It's like a sort of skill, just something else that you have to learn to do. There are a lot of weird and wonderful characters in Alice in Wonderland, and bringing each one to life in live action posed a unique challenge for the Remakes crew. Animation supervisor David Schaub told Cinema Blend, from a technical perspective, staying was incredibly tricky, since every shot required an animated CG body underneath a photographic element of Crispin Glover's head. Because the Knave of Hearts is so tall, Glover spent the entirety of the shoot on stilts. This guaranteed that eye lines would match up and make things a whole lot easier for the VFX team, but for Glover, it didn't come easy. According to Schaub, the actor spent several days hobbling around the set trying to get the hang of it. But at least the process of getting ready to shoot wasn't too complicated. As Glover himself says, there were no prosthetics. There was nothing like that, although there was a scar application. The rest of it was done in green screen. Tim Burton didn't return to direct the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, but Disney did manage to secure the services of Ken Ralston, who helped oversee the visual effects on the first movie. Knowing full well that Alice Through the Looking Glass was going to be an even bigger challenge for the visual effects department, Ralston brought his Sony Pictures Imageworks colleague Jay Red along for some much-needed support. Red told Animation World Network, when we started looking at the show, we knew it was going to be gigantic. There was more variety in this one than the first one. You could safely say it was bigger. There were more varied environments than in the first film. Star Mia Wasikowska worked with a lot of green screen in the first movie, so she was well used to it by the time the sequel began shooting. The major difference the second time around was that her role was a lot more physical, with more running and jumping involved. The actor told Quirky Inspired, sustaining that level of energy when you have quite little coming back at you in terms of the set is challenging. It's just a big green blob of light and there's not much. We had a few more sets on this film, which was really great, but otherwise it's quite like an abstract experience. When Angelina Jolie accepted the lead role in Disney's Maleficent, she brought in her own personal makeup artist and a special effects makeup guru. Together, they created the anti-heroine's look, staying as close to the animated version from 1959's Sleeping Beauty as possible. They crafted facial prosthetics to give Jolie those high cheekbones, which reportedly made execs at the Mouse House rather nervous. Ariane Titan, the makeup artist who created said facial prosthetics, told Fashionista, they were like, wait, what? Prosthetics on Angelina? Why are we covering her up? They were not very keen on it. Jolie insisted on keeping them and ultimately got her way, but the movie still utilized plenty of visual effects. After all, this is a fantasy movie featuring some major action sequences, the kind of scenes that can only be achieved with CGI. According to Kelly Port, the movie's VFX supervisor, he and his team decided to adopt a less is more approach, which paid off handsomely. He says, for me, visual effects are a tool and should always be thought of as a tool to support the film. They always need to serve the purpose of the film and move the story along. That's when they're most successful. With Maleficent, we knew what was working well and what to pay attention to. According to MPC's Jessica Norman, Disney wanted the latest in visual effects for 2019's Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. There were over 1,000 VFX artists working on the big-budget sequel at one stage, many of them pouring their time and energy into Angelina Jolie's flying sequences. Norman told Art of VFX, the actress and the other fake characters were filmed whilst attached to operated tuning fork rigs on a blue screen stage. In some shots, we attach CG wings. Some shots are full or partial CG takeovers. In a behind-the-scenes featurette, Jolie revealed what it's like being strapped into a rotating tuning fork rig for hours on end.
They're doing the up and the down and the spin, but your body is dictating whether you're turning left or right, and then they have to go with you.
Jolie later told Hello Magazine that she and co-star Sam Riley even had a near miss while filming a flying sequence. Thankfully though, they both made it out in one piece. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.